This is Elected, a podcast for women in and around politics. I'm your host, Sarah Elder-Chamanara, and this week my guest is Jyoti Gondek. In the spirit of reconciliation, I'd like to acknowledge that I live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. My guest today, Jyoti Gondek, is currently running for mayor of Calgary. But she's also, technically, can I still call you a sitting councillor, or is there like some kind of in-between gray zone? Because your last meeting was it ended last night.
It ended last night at about 9:15 or something. So I'm still technically a councillor until election day on October 18th. Just no official council meetings. I have 2 more committee meetings still.
Oh. So you're currently the Ward 3 councillor, which is in north central Calgary, in this odd gray zone of being an election, but you chair the City of Calgary's Standing Policy Committee on Planning and Urban Development. And prior to 2017, when you were first elected, you were the director of the Westman Centre for Real Estate Studies at the University of Calgary's Haskayne School of Business. And you also served on the Calgary Planning Commission. You had board and advisory positions. You were on the Urban Land Institute, the National Executive Forum on Public Property, the Calgary Economic Development's Commercial Real Estate Committee, and you have a PhD in urban sociology. Jyoti, when I read that list, it kind of screams qualified to me.
It kind of screams qualified and prepared. I mean, yeah. I didn't take this lightly when I decided to run in 2017. It was actually a reflection back on my life. And I realized that I had spent 10 years learning about city building and being actively engaged through the various things I had done professionally and as a volunteer. And like that 10-year journey of finding my heart and finding what I wanted to do is what led me to run. So I just felt prepared, and that's why I did it.
Yeah. And it's been interesting to me because people have asked me, what makes Jyoti qualified to run for office? And, besides listing your background and your accomplishments, tell me what it is in that list that doesn't make you qualified. Like, what is it that's missing to that person? Or is it possibly that you're a woman and you're being held to a higher standard?
You're posing an interesting question because I have heard this before. I've heard it more about me than posed directly to me. And I've heard it from a lot of women in this particular election campaign where they have, been out somewhere and someone said, I don't think she's qualified. And they'll pull out their phone and pull up the website and show somebody my bio. And the individual will say, oh, I didn't know that. So I'm not qualified, but they don't actually know anything about me. And then it goes even a step further. Even after that evidence that's presented to them, well, I just don't think she's right for the job. And I don't know what that means. Like, let's draw our own conclusions from that. But it's incredibly frustrating when people say you're not qualified without knowing anything about you.
Well, because they're making that, let's be fair, let's be honest, they're making that judgment based on gender. Mm-hmm. So, it's definitely an opportunity for people to maybe pause and consider their bias, their own individual bias. But it's puzzling to me when you say, she has X, Y, and this is true for any woman running for office. Let's use Hillary Clinton as an example. Let's when no matter, former first lady, like an attorney, secretary, ambassador or secretary of state, senator, still not qualified.
Chrystia Freeland gets us all day long. Yeah, she can't be finance minister. She knows nothing about finance.
Yeah.
Like, do you know her background? Do you actually know her bio? No,
yeah.
But she doesn't look like she knows anything about finance. It's this whole, she doesn't look like she's qualified. She doesn't look like she can do this job. Well, we need to normalize the fact that you can look like this and do that job.
You can be a woman.
Yeah,
And
it's okay.
And you can do jobs that are hard, and you can do hard things.
Because we've done them our whole lives. They just
Yeah.
haven't been perceived in that manner.
Yeah. Um, so, what do you say to someone who's like, well, I just don't want to, like, why would I vote for her, just based on her gender? And so I've gotten this question too. And I've said, well, it's not just about her being, potentially Calgary's first female mayor. It's also that she is point blank, in my opinion, you are the most qualified out of anyone running.
Well, I appreciate that. And you know what? If you stack up what I have done and what I bring to the table, there's a lot of experience there. There's a lot of qualification. And the big thing that's there is I spent the time learning the role. I took the time to understand what it is that I would be doing. I paid my dues, so to speak. And so if you only look at me on paper and you only look at the things I've done to prepare for this job, I'm clearly qualified. But when you add the image, that's what throws everybody off. And that's the problem we have as a society. We can't link the qualifications and the preparedness to what that person looks like because we're too used to seeing a different version of what that person should be.
Well, I mean, I'd love to do a test. I would love to put some people in a room who, who can't identify candidates based on what they look like. So, they're very, they're probably they're very fresh. They're very fresh voters. And I'd love to print off without names, without, any kind of identifying pronouns. And I would print off the qualifications of each person running for mayor. And I would present them to these fresh voters. And based on simply the words on the page and the qualifications, I'd love to see what their reaction would be. And then at the end, we'd be like, this person's qualifications, this is her, or this is him. And then see if they would change their minds based on that.
I can give you a couple of examples. We don't even have to do that test. Let me share with you a real life story that is quite amusing. So 2 years into my term, having had 3 meetings in my office, like in my actual Ward 3 councillor office, with a community leader, someone who's very well respected in Calgary. I was at a breakfast with one of my colleagues and, another business person. This individual comes up, greets both of the other men by name, and looks at me and says, "Are you so-and-so's assistant?" And I had no words. And so my colleague said, this is Jyoti, still a blank look. And then, "She's the Ward 3 councillor. You've met with her before?" Like nothing, didn't even register. I have gone places with my council colleagues who are men and been asked whose wife I am. I have been asked, what job do you do in his ward office? Repeatedly. If I go somewhere with my husband, he's the Ward 3 councillor. All the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, do I have an interest in wanting to see, Calgary's first female mayor? 100% I do. But just overriding, because, in addition to you just being most qualified, but we also need to, this really actually matters. This really matters. Who represents the city of Calgary matters, who that person is, what they believe, the policies that they advocate for, the conversations that they have with different levels of government, just not only internal to Alberta, but also, with other provinces as well as the federal government. It's 2021. We're ready for this change. I'm ready for the next leader to take on the representation of the city of Calgary, and I'm really hoping that's you.
I hope so too, because I'm ready for it as well.
Okay. So I want to ask, what does Calgary look like to you in 10 and 20 years? Basically, when your child is, out in the world, maybe buying their first home. My children are, in university maybe, or whatever it is that they choose to do. What would the city look like when they are walking around it or driving around it?
You know what I love about your question is to answer it properly, I need to look back a little bit, and I need to think about, what was it that drew me here, and what was it that made me stay? I was 28 when we came to Calgary, and remember, I came from Manitoba, where $100,000 would get you a house. That was not the case.
And a nice
Calgary.
house.
Probably with a nice house. Yeah.
Probably with a nice house.
Yeah, in a nice neighborhood where there's all kinds of amenities. And that just was not what Calgary had in store for us. So I remember driving till we qualified, basically. And we bought our first home in Coventry Hills, which is a fantastic community. But at the time, that was where we could afford to live. It was relatively close to, the few people that we knew in the city at the time. But the shopping center, for groceries, and the local pub and the drugstore and the veterinarian started being built after we moved into that home. And the whole community got built out around us, and it became much easier to live there as all of those things popped up. It became much more walkable, much more accessible. And that's why we've stayed. We've put down roots there. So when I think about the fact that the city had to grow around where I purchased a house, that's disappointing. That was a sacrifice we made. So when I forecast to the future, I don't want people to have to make that sacrifice. I want to make sure that we are redeveloping established areas in a way that anybody could choose to live there, whether you want to rent or own, regardless of the size of home that you want to be in. I want to make sure that any new communities that we're building have that walkability and access to all of the things you need to get about your daily routine. We have to be a much more mixed use city. And that sounds like jargon. But what I'm trying to say is you should be able to get up in the morning, get ready, walk your kids to school, or, get them on their bike and off they go. You should be able to drop off your dog at a doggy daycare if you need to. You should be able to get to work within a few minutes, not have to drive if you don't want to, easy access to a bus or a train, and, get your teeth cleaned at lunchtime because the dentist's office is a block away from you. Yeah. Things like that. The stuff that
you're describing my old life in Victoria. Yeah. I was able to do all of those things, and it's harder. It's harder in Calgary, even if you live in the downtown core.
Well, the downtown core is particularly problematic because when we built our city, and particularly when we built our downtown, our entire focus was on building office towers and making it this mecca for business and demonstrating that you should headquarter here. And the thing that we forgot to do is put places for people to live and, people to actually build a life around the place they work, because our priorities back in that day were to separate where you work from where you live. We bought into this myth of needing an idyllic pastoral setting for your home so it can be peaceful and you're away from where you work. But that's also a 20-minute drive to where you need to go every single day. So we didn't get it right. And to fix downtown, we have to make sure that there are easy ways for people to, have a little bit of recreation, do all of the things they need to do. It's not just about office space.
I'll never forget so I'm from BC. I spent almost a month of every summer in Alberta, in like the High River Okotoks area. And we would come into Calgary occasionally as like a big trip into the city. So my memories of Calgary are very different as a little girl than as an adult. So fast forward, I decided to give up politics, my job in politics. I fell in love. I moved to Fort McMurray.
Ooh.
Yes. And then Ali, my husband, is transferred from Fort McMurray to Calgary. And so I remember it was the first weekend that we were here, living in a temporary, we were looking for somewhere to live, like a permanent, like to buy a home. But we were staying in this temporary accommodation downtown in Eau Claire, which is like near the river, like really downtown. It is. And I remember having seen some kind of like social media announcement about a market that was also downtown. And I was so excited. Having, been in Victoria and then in Fort McMurray, I was like, oh, city living, here I come. I'm so excited. I remember walking out of the apartment in Eau Claire in downtown Calgary. And I remember putting it in my Google Maps, and it was like, it said like half an hour walking. And I was like, oh, okay, like this must be wrong.
Yeah.
But then I started walking through downtown Calgary on a Saturday morning in the summer. Like it was in the spring, and there was no one there. And I was like, am I missing something? Was there some kind of like public emergency? Did everyone evacuate? Like, I'm not even joking. I couldn't figure out why it was so empty. Coffee shops were closed. There was just no one there. And then I walked and I walked and I walked and I eventually got to what is kind of considered, I guess, the Beltline area. But to me, I was just floored at like how a city center, coming from BC where, Vancouver's never quiet. Like Robson Street is never quiet. It's only quiet if something is wrong.
Yeah.
Or it's maybe Christmas Day. But like, I was floored at that. And I feel like we need people who are willing to address that head on and have those really awkward and tough conversations and do some really creative things to fix these. Because like, we can't have tourists coming from out of town to downtown Calgary to stay and to, be impressed by our city, and then have coffee shops closed and have them wander around thinking like, why is there no one here?
Yeah. And, I mean, it's been very interesting on the campaign trail too, because there's a lot of narratives that people feed to you. So the one about I'm a born and raised Calgarian, that's fantastic. I think that's spectacular. And, I'm happy for you, but I'm not. I came here by choice, and I've lived in other places. I mean, I've lived in little tiny towns. I've lived in Winnipeg. I've lived in Vancouver. I have worked from, Ontario through to British Columbia in various jobs I've had. So I've experienced all kinds of cities. And I can tell you, whether those cities were big or small, all of them had a downtown that was a draw.
Yeah.
And it was a place that everybody wanted to be. And we never got that right. I mean, we had Electric Ave for a while, right? Back in the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
Kind of.
Does that mean that they had neon signs?
They had neon signs, yeah.
Okay.
There's Electric Avenue. Come on.
Like
Sarah.
Literally. No, I'm like thinking, is it like nightclubs or is it neon signs?
No, it was nightclub. It was bustling. Like
okay.
It was fun. You would go from Coconut Joe's over to the next place and like across the street and all of this. And there was lineups and it was packed. It was like, remember when the Red Mile was a thing and 17th Ave was hopping? It was like that. So we used to have those things. But here's the weird thing about Calgary. And this is what I experienced on Calgary Planning Commission. There was this incredible worry that 17th Avenue was getting too busy and it was too cool. And everything was too full, and we needed to regulate it. We needed to regulate the social disorder. And it was the most bizarre meeting I've ever sat through. And then somebody said, well, what we need to do is limit the size of the establishments. That'll fix everything. Okay, no, it won't. It won't fix the fact that people want to go to this place because it's where they think it's cool to be. This is where they want to congregate. So if the issue is that people are doing bad things, well, let's go in and do some enforcement. You can't limit the size of a building.
No. Oh my gosh. You know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of the movie Footloose.
Yeah.
It makes me think of the small town who has this kid come from the big city and he stirs things up and kids start to dance and everyone is like, whoa, now. Yeah. This is out of control.
No dancing here, my
No
friends.
dancing here. No dancing here. And I feel like that's kind of the push and pull of Calgary too, is that like social conservative, but also it's such an odd place.
Well, Calgary it's just weird. It's like so for odd. A young city, it makes no sense to me. Like the strange bylaws that we have. Here's the one I call the fun sucker condition.
Okay.
You can have a patio, you can have like an outdoor eating area, you can serve drinks on it, but thou shalt not have outdoor speakers. I remember reading this condition and saying, why can't you have outdoor speakers? Like, what does this even mean? Well, because it's noisy. But that's why we have a noise bylaw. And so, it took me a year to figure out how to extract that condition from people that were applying to have an outdoor patio space with their business. Why do we do these things? Why do we put fencing around the fire pits that are supposed to keep us warm in the winter? Like, why is my question around most of the things we do. We have this tendency to regulate the fun right out of anything that would make us interesting and exciting. And that's got to stop.
But this is, for anyone listening outside of Calgary, this is also not just a Calgary issue. This is also a Vancouver issue. This is like a Granville Street issue. I'm sure we, where are places that have been able to overcome this? Like Montreal, Quebec City, like Toronto. If Calgary wants to be a big city, like a world-class city, then we need to start doing things that make us a little bit more world-class. And I know that may upset some people, but I'm fine saying it. I don't believe Calgary is a world-class city. I think we have the potential to be one.
Well, and people are getting very picky about that term too, world-class city, and they think it's something that people are just throwing around. And I want to make sure that we're very intentional in how we're using that phrase. The reason world-class and global matter as terms is because people can frankly live anywhere they want to right now. They can locate their business anywhere they want to. They can move themselves and their families anywhere they want to. And I would frankly like them to be here. I'm very interested in drawing those people to our city. So we are competing globally. We are competing with the rest of the world to have top-notch people living in our city. So that's why we need to invest in things like public transit so you can get around easily without your car. Yeah. That's why we need to invest in things like an actual space where people can congregate and enjoy a concert or have, God forbid, a beer in the park. There's other cities have got this right because they understand that if you draw people to a place and a space and they make it come alive, then the chances of social disorder actually go down because there's a bunch of people together regulating each other's behavior informally.
Well, I think, do we want to attract people who come here and basically, it's almost kind of like a fly in, fly out mentality. Yeah. Do you want to attract people simply because you have a well-paying job and they actually maintain a second residence somewhere else and that they, come here during the week to work, which I've met people who do this. They come to Calgary, they stay during the week, and then they go back home to Victoria or Vancouver or wherever it is. Because we don't have those same things that other cities do, but we could.
Well, and here's another example. There's a lot of people in Calgary who have the means to winter somewhere else. And these are the very same people that are asking me questions about, but how do I get my kids to stay in Calgary? They want to move away. And I keep thinking, well, you're moving away 6 months a year. You're leaving. You're setting the example that they shouldn't be here, that there's much more interesting places to be. I would prefer to work with all of you who leave for 6 months every year and figure out what would make you stay. And if it's only the weather that is making you leave, let's talk about that, because there's other cities that have far worse weather conditions than we do. People hang around. They like to
Toronto is not a picnic in the winter.
Quebec City.
No.
Montreal,
These are not tropical destinations.
Nope.
I know. We need to do more to keep people here. That's just what we need to do. But anyway, we've talked about this for a while now, but something else that's really important and really topical, because there's a federal election going on right now. Although by the time this podcast airs, it may or may not be over. I'm not sure. But yesterday you were talking, so tell me about childcare in the city of Calgary.
Oh, wow. Childcare and the city of Calgary. I have to tell you, I've been aware of the issue of childcare. I'm obviously impacted by issues around childcare. I remember trying to figure out, oh my goodness, what am I going to do when my child and I both started school at the same time in 2009? I had to walk kiddo to the bus stop and then figure out who was going to be there to meet them off the bus because I was going to be at school. And all of a sudden, all of my social networks became much more important. And all of a sudden, I started paying attention to the fact that, my goodness, if I send mom, it takes her a while to cross the street. And there's no marked crosswalk here. Like everything hit me like a ton of bricks. The city is not designed for me to be able to do all of these things. How am I going to do them? And so childcare came into play, and social networks with other moms and parents came into play. But I don't think I ever really considered the problems that we have with childcare until two women named Jen and Shelby had a meeting with me a few months ago to talk about how one of their children was assaulted in care and the other one her daughter died in care at the age of 22 months. And it was like, I've had a lot of heavy meetings in my 4 years. I've met with people who advocated for the conversion therapy ban. I've met with people who have suffered through some pretty traumatic racist incidents. But this mom talking about her baby dying, how do you not listen and do something? And the worst part of it was that she had to go through criminal proceedings, and the individual was found guilty. And only then could they go into the fatality inquiry. And they went into the fatality inquiry, and 10 recommendations were made by the justice. And those have not been enacted by this provincial government. So in 2018, the recommendations came out. In 2019, this government came to power. This woman has met with anybody and everybody. And what they've told her is, we're not interested in regulating unlicensed care. It's not our problem. How do you do that? How do you say that to this woman? So I couldn't say that to her. I said, I will do whatever I can. And so the notice of motion that we brought talks about what are we going to do to make sure that these are safe environments for the operator as well as the child. How do we make sure that people have the proper training? How do we make sure that parents are assured that this is a qualified and certified place? So our business licensing process might be the key. That's what we need to look at. The other thing is funding to make sure that operators can get their staff trained and that parents can get affordable care spaces. That funding flows from the feds to the province. And I think we all know how that's going right now. So the other proposal in the motion I brought yesterday was skip the middle person. Just send the money straight to cities who can demonstrate that we have partnerships where we can provide affordable childcare spaces for parents. And then our own problems as a municipality, let's create more ability to have childcare located where parents would like to be able to drop off their kids. So that's the way I look at childcare in the city. We need to create more opportunity for spaces. We need to fund it in a way that it's affordable, and we need to make sure that our kids are safe.
So if you're out and someone says, like, I just don't want they don't understand the different roles and responsibilities of different levels of government too, but they're like, what, this is not the city's business. The city has no role to play in anything related to childcare. This is up to the province and the federal government. Besides telling the story, and it would be really hard for me to understand someone not having empathy for that situation and possibly not changing their thought process around it and why safe and affordable childcare being necessary. But what do you say to someone who makes it purely an economic argument?
Oh, people that make it purely an economic argument are frankly the easiest ones to speak with. Do you want more people paying income tax so that we each have to pay a little bit less? Yes, probably. So if you have more labor force participation and you have more people working and all of us are paying our taxes, we're going to have a much better life. It's when you've got massive unemployment and limited opportunity for people to work that we run into problems. So if the key to increasing labor force participation is to provide access to safe and affordable childcare, why would we say no to that? And frankly, you know what else I'm tired of while I'm on this little rant here?
Please.
I am tired of being told to stay in my lane. That's the provincial government's responsibility. We have a dumpster fire of a provincial government. They cannot manage a pandemic. They cannot manage childcare. They are slashing municipal budgets left, right, and center. This is not a provincial government that we can rely on. It's certainly not one we can work with. So this whole argument about, will you be able to collaborate? No one can collaborate. I'm looking forward to the next election to see if there's actually someone we can collaborate with. This provincial government will not get the job done on any front that they're responsible for. They have offloaded responsibility for their citizens onto municipal governments. And you can ask any municipality in this province, they will tell you the same thing. Closed.
Okay. Yes. I'm actually, we've had a mayor for the last number of years who has been slightly outspoken in talking about the relationship and, what the province has and hasn't done. But I'm actually looking for it to be a little bit more fiery, to be honest. I want a little bit more fire. So
we're not going to get what we need if we don't ask for it.
yeah.
So, I mean, we tried the nice approach. I mean, I remember it was Casey Madhu when he became Minister of Municipal Affairs that held a meeting at the McDougall Centre, and I went, because he's Minister of Municipal Affairs and I was Chair of Planning and Urban Development. I thought it was important to build a relationship. The relationship didn't go anywhere after that. That was like a single invitation I ever had to chat with him. No calls, no emails returned. Then we went through, 17 other ministers of municipal affairs, some that went on Hawaiian vacations. They just don't get back to you. You cannot build relationships with people who don't get back to you. So we've tried this stoic approach of hoping for better. It's not working.
Yeah.
So if we want to have a good quality of life, we're going to have to go in there and fight for it.
Yeah, agreed. So talking about working and potentially fighting, but hopefully a more harmonious dynamic. Remind me how many councillors have just left council?
Oh my goodness, we have 5 departing members of council. We've got Councillor Woolley and Councillor Farrell and Councillor Chahal and Councillor Keating that are leaving, and Mayor Nenshi.
And Mayor Nenshi. Yeah. So there will be a lot of new faces on council.
There will.
And election day for municipal elections in Alberta is October 18th. But let's think about you win. You're mayor. You've got all of these new faces and some old ones around the table. What is that working relationship going to be like?
Well, I think one of the most important things that you can do is build a relationship that allows you to be human. It's this dehumanizing element of politics that's become quite dangerous and very unproductive. So if you have someone who is your foe because they're from an opposing party or an opposing ideology, it's really easy to berate people and, go through the whole theater of council meetings because now you have the antagonist and the protagonist. It becomes drama. And we're there to govern. We're not there to put on a performance, especially at the municipal level. It shouldn't be about, ideologies at war with each other. It should be about doing the right thing for your citizens. So it was incredibly rewarding to create friendships and collegial relationships with my colleagues. I can tell you that I have respect in one way or another for virtually everybody that I've served with. And we cared about each other. When incidents happened at council where people had to be, pulled out of a meeting for an emergency, we were there to help out. Like the rest of us would pick up the pieces and carry on. And it didn't matter if we had differing ideologies. We just cared about each other as people. And I want to carry that forward. I need to build relationships with the other members of council so that I can understand what drove them to run, what do they want to accomplish, and what's my role in helping them be successful. And from a more formal process-driven perspective, I think the fact that we're going to have an executive committee is incredibly important, because when you've got one person as the chief elected officer, that's the mayor, trying to manage all of the relationships with all of the other, stakeholders, the other orders of government, the business community, the social sector, that's pretty heavy work for one office. Now we're going to have 6 other people working with the mayor to accomplish all of the really big things we have going on. And those are the standing policy committee chairs. And those people are democratically elected by their peers. So it's an amazing example of how the people that wish to do the work will actually be working with the mayor to do some big stuff. But you have to be able to reward people for doing that work. And I look forward to, being the person that says at the podium or in a scrum, listen, yeah, this great news has come to Calgary, but I'm going to get the councillor from Ward 3 to tell you, how they made this happen. So share the work and share the reward.
Yeah. No, I think that's that would be a welcome change.
Yeah.
And also, city building and the mayor is just one person, and the work that making Calgary better is not just the work of the mayor. It's like literally the work of all of us. It's my work as a small business owner, as a mom, as a person. It's this idea that it's like, well, it's not my job. it's, that's somebody else's job. Then we're all, then you have a role to play indirectly, not making our city a better place.
Well, you know what I love about your comment there, Sarah, is the fact that that's basically how I got into this work. I felt that it was my job to make my community and my city a better place. And so, I volunteered on the community association. I volunteered on municipal campaigns. I volunteered at Planning Commission. And then I came into this role to really drive the decision making in the way that I thought it was important. So, if more Calgarians were able to feel that their engagement matters and that their voices matter to their elected officials, I think we would have a lot more harmony in the way we go about city building.
Agreed. So, well, let's, because I don't want to take too much of your time because I know you're a very busy person, but if someone is interested in voting for you or in learning more about you, how do they do that?
The easiest one-stop way to do this is to go to the website. It's just www.jyotigondek.ca, and it's JYOTIGONDEK. And everything's there. The bio is there. Priorities are there. You can learn a little bit about, the policy stuff, or you can open up the whole thing and learn a lot about, my position on a lot of big issues, everything from, public amenities like transit to the climate crisis, to the economic situation we're in. Everything is there. And if you want to volunteer and get involved, that opportunity is available as well. For people that want to get a little snippet of, how I'm feeling about things on a regular basis, Twitter, Instagram, good places to go. That's probably the best thing to do.
Yeah. So just a reminder, municipal elections are October 18th. It's a Monday, isn't it?
It's a Monday.
It's a Monday.
I have some more info for you.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So Monday, October 18th is election day. There are 187 voting locations that will be open on that day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. But you must go to your specific polling station. So please make sure you do the research on where that is. However, if you want to vote in advance, you can vote between October 4th and 10th, where there are 37 designated advance voting stations. Again, you will have to go to a specific one, so check out where it is, but you have that opportunity.
Great. Well, we're going to get this federal election dealt with, and then the focus will go back to municipal. And not that the federal election isn't important, because there are some very big critical pieces on the table that will be, decided on the outcome. But I think Albertans are really keen to get to the ballot box for multiple elections. One is obviously more immediate. One is still a couple years away. But yeah, I'm optimistic. I try to stay optimistic about, the future of Calgary and who's going to be leading our city going forward. So
I think staying optimistic is the best thing we can all do. And you know what? All change starts locally.
Yeah.
All of us can play a role in that change. All of us can play a role in the positivity and the progression that we need for our city. So I encourage everyone to stay involved, stay engaged, and please vote. And remember, this election is not only about who you're voting for as mayor. You have to make sure you vote for strong councillors, because your mayor will have to work with 14 other people. And please do not forget about your school board trustees.
Yes.
If we have ever not paid attention to that race, this is the year to make sure we step up our game and do our research. These are the folks that are responsible for the curriculum. These are the folks that made sure our kids are safe during a pandemic. They matter a lot.
Yeah, they really do. Thank you for that reminder, because yes, it is often, they get the least attention during the municipal election cycles, and they really do matter. That matters a whole heck of a lot. Yeah. So thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I'm sure I'll see you on Twitter soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always fun to have conversations with you. And you know what? You just, you bring a lot of light into days that are sometimes dark. So thank you for everything you do. You're amazing. See, my dog likes you too.
I love that. That's a great validator. Oh, that'll sound horrible on a podcast. I can't believe I just did that. But anyways, thank you for joining me. Yes. So This has been another episode of Elected. Thank you very much to Jyoti Gondek for joining me today. Next week's episode, because I know I've been a bit neglectful of putting out a weekly podcast, but Jyoti, you might be interested in this as well. I'm going to be doing an upcoming podcast on the history of women getting elected to Calgary City Council with Heritage Calgary. So that's coming very, very soon. So thank you again for listening, and until later.